Hello, everyone. Welcome to our 18th R&D session. I am Monica Fernandes from EDP New. EDP New is the R&D center of EDP. And since last year, we have been organizing these webinars that we call R&D sessions, where we basically explore some topics on the energy sector that we work on in our projects, and we get together experts on the team and we bring it to these webinars. Last we already had some webinars related with different topics like hydrogen, floating offshore wind, the power of artificial intelligence for renewables. So if you didn't have the chance to watch these webinars, you can go to our website and watch them offline because the recordings are all there. And for today's session, we organized an event, a session about 5G. And I can tell you that we prepared a very interesting and dynamic session. So I wish you all a great session. And I also want to encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A chat, because in the end, we'll have some time dedicated to answer to your questions. So take the opportunity to answer your questions, because we have the right people here to answer. And that's all from my side. Now I pass the screen to my colleague Gonçalo Lacerda, that will be the moderator of this session. Thank you all, and I wish you all a great session.
Hello, good afternoon. As Monica said, my name is Gonçalo Lacerda and I work at EDP New. Regarding the agenda for today, we will have two, I think, very interesting sessions and then a Q&A session at the end. The first session will be regarding 5G agreed to all services. Second one, we will show an European project that we are working on called 5G as a Service. It is a project from the European Union, and the third session will be Q&A. Regarding the first session, let me present you Simon Pryor. Simon is an engineering, having received degrees from UK and US universities. He has had a long career in software and network engineering, especially in communication technologies like satellite and 3GPP mobile networks. Simon leads the research and innovation activities of Aceleran, focused on current 4G and 5G networks and future evolutions towards 6G in a portfolio of European research and innovation projects. Beyond the purely technical background, Simon has also extensive commercial and business experience. His goal is to bring these technologies and research to the market to solve real business problems. Simon, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So 5G. So just a quick word on Aceleran. So we're a Belgian company, a small company based in Antwerp in Belgium. We focus on producing 4G and 5G radio access networks. So parts of the 5G networks that are in the typical towers. And we do a lot of focus because of our business it's necessary to do a lot of research because everything is continual future development. So as mentioned, I lead the research and innovation action. So 5G, just to put it into perspective, of course, all of you have your 4G phones today, I'm sure, and many of you would sort of had 3G and 2G phones before. But 5G fits into the 2020s. So we had some of the earliest research and the work for 5G started towards the end of 2018-19. In the beginning of 2020-21, the first rollout of 5G services happened. And this will continue happening. It's expected that 6G will kick in something like 2030 timeframe. No one's quite sure yet, but that sort of period. And within that time frame of 5G, there will be a number of evolutions. So what of the first networks that are rolled out today are typically called non-standalone. So that is essentially 4G networks with 5G being added to it. This allows, of course, the marketing to promote 5G. But it's still essentially the same sort of idea. It's a network for smartphones, for consumers. The real 5G that we're going to see over the next few years starts focusing on business applications, vertical markets as they're called. So for things like Industry 4.0, e-health, smart agriculture, that sort of things, but also utilities fit very much into that time frame. And these are a number of releases that are ongoing. So within the 4G and 5G, all the standards are managed by an organization called 3GPP. And 5G started with a release 15 and is going on to release 18 and onwards. So currently release 16 is the one that's standardized, and a lot of work is going on to add extra capabilities. Now, just a very high level view on what 5G will bring to the economy. I mean, if I just look at Portugal, so the idea is that it should increase with 11 billion euros the GDP of Portugal and provide something like 260,000 new jobs. So there is certainly a cost to invest and roll out Europe, but there will be a lot of benefits by enabling a lot of industries to be more efficient, enabling new types of industries. So the 5G will add a lot of economic impact to Europe and around the world. And so for each amount of money that's invested in rolling out 5G, there will be a lot of benefits too. Compared to 4G, there's been a lot going on internally in deploying 5G networks. One thing that's already been happening over 2G and 3G period is more and more frequencies. There's such a hunger for bandwidth. There's more and more users, and everyone wants to transmit video, and there's a lot of applications that were not possible before, and that is only possible by having new spectrum, new bandwidth to allow the transmissions to happen. So there's been a lot of interest in having higher frequencies, mid-band frequencies that are become very important for 5G. And still under initial deployments, and in the future, so-called higher frequency millimeter wave. The benefits of this is that they provide a lot more throughput, a lot more bandwidth. The issue is that as you go up in the frequency, there's also, as they travel a much shorter distance. So whereas before you had a small number of these big towers that you see that we call macro cells, but increasingly what is happening is this is evolving to a network where there's a lot more smaller base stations that probably look a bit more like Wi-Fi access points. And so this densification of the network and reusing of these networks, so there's a lot of technology in 5G and a lot of things going on that you probably don't realize. But in the end, it's to provide more bandwidth and better services to all sorts of applications. Now, what is, I think, important to realize that 5G is changing. When 4G came in, it was very much towards smartphones, B2C, so business to consumer type applications. And that will continue to dominate 5G for a long period of time. There's a great interest in having much more video streaming and live sports and online games and all those sorts of things. But what is happening, and is important certainly into the utility sector, is that 5G focuses a lot more on industrial applications, business to business type applications. And this is where the 5G specifically for something like the utilities vertical becomes important. And it's one of the significant verticals going forward. Things like manufacturing, smart healthcare, all those sort of things are probably bigger, but there's a strong focus on 5G towards utilities management. And again, utilities will benefit from 5G, as well as having to be a cost to deploy their own networks or using networks. There will be a lot to be gained by using 5G in the utility sector. Now, 5G has a typical use cases. Some of you aware of 5G would have seen these sorts of triangles before. They split they split the usage of it into different types of what is called use cases. This top one, the enhanced mobile broadband, is essentially what we have today, but just getting faster. So you'll be able to get gigabytes in a second going through networks and 3D video, 4K video, all that sorts of things. But there's a lot of additional types of use cases. This URLLC, so providing very high reliability networks, very low latency networks, massive IoT, being able to connect massive amounts of devices. And of course, this fits into things like these smart nets and micronets, having so many devices and distributed generation and storage, all being connected together for utilities, is the important part for utilities in general going forward. As I mentioned, there's been a number of releases, and important ones are ongoing. So even in 4G, there were some important releases for IoT, which is important for utilities. There's NB-IoT and LTE-M to be able to connect devices to a 4G network, and that is ongoing. Release 15 is what the first networks will be. But there's a lot of important new stuff that has happened in Release 16, which is now standardized and will be being deployed over the next year or two, including things like verticals. So special capabilities, the first steps providing functionality that utilities and smart grids need are done there. But there's a lot of ongoing planning in Release 17 and a lot in the future in Release 18. This will take many years to come through, but there's a lot of work and a lot of enhancements being done to provide additional capabilities beyond just traditional coverage with a smartphone. And so specifically why for 5G for utilities vertical. Now, the utilities have a massive mix of communication needs. You need this public coverage everywhere. You need to be able to have your smartphones or have your laptops or your working equipment wherever you go, whether it's in Portugal or anywhere around the world. But there's a lot of additional types of connectivity, private networks, specifically secure private networks, very high performance, very high reliability, that will be used to interconnect all the infrastructure of current and future utilities networks. There's also a lot of interest on using these sharing infrastructure. The problem with 5G often is the cost of deploying them. So once you've deployed the network, there's a lot of interest in using part of the network, but sharing a network with other utilities. And we'll hear more about that later. There's also a very strong need inside utilities to have very critical quality of service, things like security and very high resilience requirements you see coming back for many of the use cases inside the electricity vertical and many other vertical. And there's a lot of other functionality as well under the hood, network slicing, the usage of different combinations of frequency bands to get penetration indoors and outdoors, but also provide the necessary connectivity. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of specific requirements that are being taken on board within 5G. And these are being managed by 3GPP, but I've also pointed out what BEREC, the Association of Regulators, with their 5G radar, are mapping the needs over the next coming of years to the capabilities are necessary. So some of these capabilities are here today and will be when 5G is rolled out. And the other ones is still ongoing research that will come over a number of years. So that concludes my part. So just the messages to come through is that 5G was coming out soon, but it will become more and more important to the energy verticals, and there's a number of developments still to come. But it's a long way to go. But we've made our first steps, and things are starting to look very interesting for both of us. Okay, I'll hand you back to the.
Thank you, Simon, for the very interesting presentation. And it was very interesting to see the status of the art and where we are at the 5G areas. Let me invite all the audience to put questions for the Q&A session, because it's very interesting if the questions came from the audience regarding this area. And now let me pass to the second lecture, which is Ricardo Vitorino. Ricardo Vitorino is a software engineer passionate for smart cities, having taken his master's degree in the University of Coimbra. Ricardo is UBware's Head of Innovation for Smart Cities since 2015, where he aligns the company's strategy with research and innovation projects and initiatives, leading the technical teams on the roadmap from idea to product. Ricardo is also the vice chairman of two groups from ETSI and AIoTI, promoting best practices in data interoperability and IoT solutions for the urban society. Currently, he coordinates the H2020 project 5G as a service, which he will present afterwards. And Ricardo aims at bringing to market an innovative product, a marketplace for 5G connectivity, which he will present today. Ricardo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gonçalo. I don't know if you're seeing the right screen. I hope so. And I hope you can hear me well. But yes. Thank you so much for the kind invitation and for this session. And thanks, Simon, for sharing all the knowledge about 5G and giving this good context background for the project, which you are also part of. So in fact, as Gonçalo mentioned, 5G as a service is a project from the Horizon 2020 program, which aims at bringing a decentralized marketplace for the telecom ecosystem. And as you might have seen from Simon's presentation, 5G is a bit beyond the business to consumer, so beyond giving faster connectivity to all of our smartphones, but in fact engaging to the demand side of multiple verticals and industries that aim at having this ultra reliable, low latency connectivity to ensure that the communications between the devices and the machines are secure and scale as these devices grow. And for a utility company, such as a distribution system operator, the main benefits of these networks would be for a live monitoring of the system, for real-time fault detection or isolation and service recovery through automation. And even the smart grids can run independently and in a distributed fashion, and you can forecast the analysis of power consumption and respective preemptive contingency actions based on data that can come from this network. So as you can imagine, with all of this huge amount of devices required to make 5G a reality, so increasing the number of small cells and increasing the number of antennas with a smaller scale, as Simon presented, this would lead to a massive network deployment, and especially in a dense installation closer to the end user, closer to the industry, closer to the utilities, closer to the specific vertical where they need the network to run. So if we think of a municipality and the transit operators that run there, and you want to connect all these vehicles because they are becoming more digital and more connected and even autonomous, if you have all these devices to ensure that the latency that you need to send the message from the infrastructure to the vehicle and back, you will have unwanted telco equipment all over the place, and that's not only a pain for architects and urban planners. On a day-to-day basis, you want to move around without cluttered streets and lampposts and traffic lights with all devices and wires. So the idea here is that we can propose something that helps both the telecom operators that could struggle with available sites and high cost installation because they need to scale a lot of antennas and deploy a lot of devices, but also for cities or end users that don't want increased urban visual pollution, so they want to have things nice and clean. And the solution comes from this concept of neutral hosting, where you can have an operator reducing their expenses with capital and operations because they won't need to deploy all on their own, and you would have new business opportunities for infrastructure owners. So the neutral host means that the host for these equipments is not necessarily the one who operates the network. So in a way, you would have efficient access to the sites with business models as pay as you go, and the site owners, the infrastructure owners. So think of a train operator with a train station, or a utility with a lot of lampposts and light towers and substations all across. They can capitalize on available infrastructure by renting the space and the connectivity to an operator. So I mean, this has a real benefit, because using a higher frequency spectrum in 5G, we'll need more radio sites in 4G. You saw that in Simon's presentation, even more if we think in a hyperdense urban area. So this active network sharing can reduce the radio network total cost of ownership by 12 to 20%, which would reduce amount of expenses between the different stakeholders. So this creates the diversification of the value chain within the network deployment, because when you have 4G, for instance, you see the vendors, huge vendors selling to big MNOs, and that's particular in all member states, not only in Portugal. In 5G, you see the same, but increasingly more, which means that you'll have new multi-vendor radio network functions from compliant with open standards and best practices in architecture. You have new, smaller and private communication service providers and neutral host operators, so owners and operators of towers and even cities or other businesses coming up as neutral host operators. And you'll see the increased complexity and role for integrators to provide the solutions that enable all of this technology. But if we can do it right, we'll enable to have zero-touch installation and operation through automation intelligence, which means that you don't need a human to do manual labor, and things can be implemented thanks to technology automatically. And you see more and more ICT players and cloud providers looking to join this party, trying to grab a piece of the cake of this huge market. And again, this brings a shift between on the business model. So you'll be able to see that you have from a business to consumer to a business to business approach, and there's a lot of opportunity to outsource and create new partnerships and ecosystems. Because when you have these neutral hosts, which can allow for deployment of a network, and we call these networks typically a slice, because you can actually book a specific range of bandwidth for that network. This implies signing different contracts with different entities and locking money to be distributed to ensure that all the parties get their share based on the SLA. So you have to do this can do this in a decentralized approach, and ensuring that everyone gets their slice. And that's part of what we are proposing in 5G as a service, that we can do this automatically and through decentralized marketplace. And I don't want to delve in too much in the technology, but basically this comes out with three major components. So on the one hand, UbiWare had developed a centralized marketplace for site leasing and tenant management associated with a recent joint venture called the Smart Lamppost. We have from Acceleran the platform Direx, so it's an interoperable standards-based and software-focused implementation of 5G networks. And we have also from a previous European project called 5G City, an automated 5G network slicing engine for neutral hosts, which allows this not only in the technical way, but also the business model was also validated. So 5G as a service expands these layers. So the centralized marketplace, the 5G network and radio management, and the slicing capability for neutral hosts with this decentralized marketplace connecting the whole value chain of 5G stakeholders. So the network operators, the site owners, system integrators, and hardware and software vendors using blockchain, which ensures that everything in the smart contracts or the agreements of this new business and acquisition of equipment is ensured, and we can ensure that it's trustworthy and registered in the blockchain, where everyone can commit and have this sort of new business approach, where you can always share the amount of investment through the different players in a distributed and transparent manner. And as Gonçalo introduced, this is in fact a EU-funded project. So it's a specific program from the Horizon 2020 program from the European Commission called Fast Track to Innovation. And this is a very specific call where we aim to create and launch new products in the market. So we have the whole value chain as a consortium, a smaller consortium joining research, industry, and a potential end user. And our approach here is to bring to market this decentralized marketplace for the telecom sector. And the consortium, so the value chain, we have Ubiware, a Portuguese software development SME. We are based in Aveiro, and we develop solutions for smart cities and telecom. Accelera, you just had a very nice pitch from Simon. I assume you all know Erage and EDPNU as end users and as pilot leaders here in the project. And then we have I2CAT, a research center in Barcelona, leading the 5G Barcelona initiative, and Nextworks, another SME, this one from Pisa, from Italy, developing solutions for 5G, including smart home, smart media, and a lot of technology for slicing, edge computing, and other technology that's required for 5G. And one of the main objectives of the project as we bring this product to market is to actually demonstrate it in at least 5 different European cities, targeting a total of 25 sites. So having 25 deployments in these 3 different European countries with 3 different possible end users. So this is the part of the objective where EDP is actually helping us, leading this activity within the consortium and pushing all of the team members to go to market and try to find new places to deploy 5G network for industry, for utilities, and other business cases which can leverage on the network for their own purposes. And there is a lot already in place, and there's a lot also to cover. And we look forward to having more opportunities to disseminate the project, to engage and onboard new pilot sites, and in fact, demonstrate 5G as a service. Thank you so much. And I now assume we go for questions, and feel free to write on the chat or the Q&A as previously mentioned. And thank you once again for your attention.
Thank you for your presentation, Ricardo. It was very interesting to present the 5G as a service projects. And now we are going to the questions and answers session. Prior to enter to it, let me present Sérgio Ramos Pinto, which is the third person of we will participate in this session. And Sérgio Pinto holds a degree in electrical engineering and computer science, telecommunications from the University of Porto, and an executive MBA from INDEG ISCTE, and has a long developed technology and managerial roles in Redes, focusing on mission critical connectivity support, and with available participation in the liberalization and disruption of the Portuguese telecom market, launching a new operator where for 18 years he performed several directive roles on engineering, operations, and customer care, leading to its later position as the company CTO. Back in Redes, he has contributed to its connectivity program, established a resilient IP backbone and a future PVNO operations, pursuing and promoting opportunities derived by technology and external service offers, and fostering European utilities best practices and telecommunications regulatory harmonization through his contribution as EUTC Vice Chair. Thank you for all 3 to participate. And let me put the first question, maybe to regarding the question that I have here to Simon. Simon, could you please describe how is going the 5G implementation progress for European citizens?
It's still in the early stages. So some countries have rolled out the first consumer type 5G networks. As I mentioned, these are essentially 5G added to 4G networks. So it's they're primarily aimed at consumers, making faster networks for consumers. But what is also happening in parallel to that is the first of these business-to-business networks. And this is especially happening in Germany, because in Germany and the UK to an extent, due to the licensing regimes that are available there, there's 5G networks already been rolled out, private networks for industrial campuses, so big factories to automate those in 5G. And that's probably the most sort of exciting new parts of it compared to the big public mobile network operators that are adding 5G to their existing 4G networks. So it varies country by country, but most countries, depending on when the auctions for the spectrum licenses are in place, I think that's when you'll see these consumer 5G. But it's for us, what I think is mentioned again, that what is certainly important is the time scale of these new types of business to business 5G networks for private networks and shared networks. And I think that's what's new and will, in the longer term, will be very exciting and important for utilities.
Gonçalo, if I may, I also could add to what Simon has explained, that 5G in the European space, it's not just another technology. So it fits as one of the pillars of what Europe calls its digital agenda and its transformation of the economy and society. So Europe has a 10-year plan, so this decade until 2030, where the goal is really to deliver gigabit to anyone, everywhere in Europe. And this is a very strong and disruptive objective. It's the first time we have this kind of objective. And to achieve this goal, so to be able to transform, to digitalize, and to support new businesses all over the territory, 5G is, let's say, and fiber, it's the technological answer to this challenge. So we are seeing this transformation from the technology side, but we are also see this very strong engagement, I would say political engagement with very clear objectives. So it needs to happen during this decade.
Thank you for your explanation, Sergio. Regarding other question that I have here, and it is a question after Simon's presentation, we have here a question from Pedro Adão. In general, sounds like a faster version of 5G, or 4G, the 5G. Seems that the functionalities are similar, or am I missing anything?
Well, I can start. So I think Simon already gave us some very important differentiators. So it's not just being faster, it's also tackling this industry 4.0 and going into the verticals. And so Simon already mentioned, so ultra reliable and low latency. This is something that is not existing today in the wireless technologies. And also supporting what it's called now massive type of machine communications. Massive means high density of devices, of IoT, of machines. So we are talking now about supporting 1 million devices per square kilometer. This is far more than 4G. And to be able to do it, 5G has very advanced innovations in its technology, in the protocols, in the security of the environment, and also in the antennas and in the smart antennas that are going to be utilized to achieve all this performance. So it's not just an incremental of speed, it's really a refoundation of the capabilities through new technology, as was said, so that it gets fit to support critical services and go into the industrial verticals.
Another question. Okay.
No, indeed, that's it, Sergio. I mean, it's easier to think of the fast 4G as a use case and thinking about, okay, I need to travel to this country and I download the entire map in less than a minute with my phone. But in practice, this really unlocks a lot of new business opportunities for operators that go beyond our regular SIM card usage, right? So for data and voice. So indeed, these new industry opportunities where they can digitize the whole building and ensure that the devices can communicate with each other and synchronize very, very fast. And in fact, enable for autonomous machines to move us around and move things around and ensure that they can leverage on a reliable network, because they really need the data coming in a very, very, very small time is essential for them to foster. So indeed, the industries and the new business to business, as Simon presented very well, are the new needs for 5G.
Question for you, Ricardo, which is very interesting. From what I heard, will I be able to rent my house to accommodate a 5G antenna?
Yeah, why not? I think that's exactly the far edge use case that we could consider. But just bear in mind that one small cell antenna, it won't be enough for enabling a proper network, but that would be a case where you can, in fact, rent a physical space from that you own to operate this 5G. Because in a way, if we think of 5G connectivity for regular day-to-day cases like gaming and having faster internet connectivity, then we need to scale these antennas. So if we can get this return on investment and share a bit of this opportunity, why not? And why not replacing the Wi-Fi we have at home or our mobile data plan at the moment and upgrade it to 5G? So indeed, that will be one very far-fetched idea that we can integrate in the marketplace. At the moment, we are thinking about site owners who have already infrastructure in place, like data centers, lampposts, or traffic lights, or other utilities infrastructure at scale. But I think that's a way that's possible to cover. I bet Simon would be very happy to have an accelerator and small cell in your home. So,
yeah, I think that's coming. I guess the sort of individual homes will come later. I mean, the first stage of that sort of model is probably like in cities. So you have a municipality that is rolling out a new sort of stage of smart lampposts that have EV chargers built into them, but can also lease out those to be able to install 5G equipment, say from mobile network operators or other private network operators. So maybe like EDP could install their networks on lampposts from a municipality. So I think that type of sort of renting out infrastructure will happen, probably more first business to business, but maybe later on more sort of consumers being able to rent out space and capabilities and connectivity as well.
Well, I have here a question regarding what Simon just said, which is interesting, which is having a 5G marketplace suppliers like a municipality can install a 5G network and will need to register in the marketplace. Then the operators can request the use. Isn't a magnitude of different equipments available, bandwidth, latency be a problem? How do you think you tackle that variety of equipments and operator requirements?
You want to start?
The question is for the three.
Yeah.
The question is for the three.
Yeah, so I mean, it's certainly a very valid question, but what is happening anyway as we're moving to 5G is things are changing anyway. A lot of the functions from a 5G network are being software functions. And so they're moving away from very large appliances into sort of software functionality that runs in the cloud or runs on standard compute services. And then you have the radios at the end, which come in all different sorts of sizes, different power levels, very low power ones for short range and for on people's houses or on lampposts, ranging to larger powers and different frequencies. So a lot of the equipment can be reused. So in a lot of cases, whether you're going to be installing a 5G system in a large tower for a public network, or whether you're going to be installing it in a private network in, say, a sort of a utility infrastructure or a factory, will be based on similar equipment and similar software, but configured specifically to the needs of those software. So of course, there are issues with all different sorts of clients and relationships between clients and suppliers and things. And that's some of the things we're trying to address in this 5G as a service, understanding those models and managing those sort of models. But underneath the technology, once you have the 5G equipment developed, supporting network slicing and supporting sort of cloud functions, a lot of that can be easily redeployed to many different scenarios.
Yeah, just to add to that, sorry Sergio for interrupting, but besides all of this, we follow best practices from open standards and the specification from 3GPP. So if you've heard Simon's presentation, you saw that there were some releases upcoming, and all the operators comply with that. So on the one hand, we have all of this compliance and integration with this proper specification that operators follow, but also we can have it, and as you asked how we tackle this variety, we can have different flavors or recipes for or templates, call it like that, for different deployments. So you could have on the one hand, request for a rural deployment or something more urban and dense, like a smart city, where you would have more devices at an earlier stage. So we can have these different types of deployments with different configurations, but always following best practices and open standards. Sorry, Sergio, go ahead. Sorry.
No problem. Well, just also to say that, I mean, the way of doing things maintains the same way. So if you want to operate a network, you need to be a licensed operator. And with that, you get some obligations, and you also have to meet some criteria. So what was already explained is within 5G and the way we are moving to software, we can now be more composable. So we have higher degrees of composability when building a network or in sourcing parts of the network. But this also means a new degree of requirements, establishing the right SLAs, doing the right audits to be sure that the equipments are right, the capacity of the equipments are right, because in the end, you still have to have someone that is responsible for service security, and for performance. So what we are talking about, it's going to be a new game where you can look for new synergies, and you can have a more intense sharing economy building these networks. But in the end, you still have to take care about how you measure things, how you assure that things will happen and the resources are available. So basically, it still needs to happen, I would say, even more intense in the way of building these networks.
Okay, well, regarding the security that you just mentioned, Sergio, I have here another question, which is, which kind of data security improves can be found in 5G regarding towards the 4G networks?
I will speak just 5 minutes because I'm not really an expert on the subject. But as we know, security needs an holistic approach. So you need to look at all the value chain. You cannot just dive in parts of this value chain. And as Simon already referred, we are now more software-based. So this also means new kind of challenge. But 3GPP is addressing the overall overarching of these networks. So there are new standards for horizontal functions like the slicing that was explained, but also for the equipment. So equipments are going to be subject. So this idea of certification is now more structured, and will also address the integrity of the telecommunication equipment, the servers, the software. So this is quite new, and I think it will have also an adequate answer. But there are new functions, like today we authenticate a user in a network, but in this future of machine type of communication, there are new features. So authentication is somehow upgraded, the capability to securely authenticate. But now there are more specifications for the devices, for the integrity of the devices. The device also authenticates the network, not just the network authenticating the device. So just to say that there are really, it's a new environment. And as was explained, it really targets verticals. And when we say this, it means that things get much more serious when you target these verticals. And so the frameworks that are being developed, and as Simon showed, this is, let's say, the near future. It's not what's happening today. So today it's just like an upgrade of 4G, but the real 5G environment will for certain address also the security of information and integrity of the network.
Any comments, Simon, Ricardo?
Yeah, that security is a massive aspect of design of 5G, and you see it. You see it coming in everywhere in the sort of specifications and things as well. But a lot of people are, certainly when it comes to private networks, a lot of people are very interested in really having their own networks they have installed, like in factories. They want total control of the entire network, so they manage who can come onto the network and who can't, have all the equipment sort of locally and stuff as well that are totally isolated from other networks. So instead of just a public network where you access the internet and all your services are running on the internet, a lot of the times in 5G with private networks, all the services will be running locally and things as well, which allow you to physically secure access to the equipment and the services in different ways. So the security aspect is vital, and certainly for industrial cases where you're beyond consumers. Being able to use it to manage an electricity network or a high value factory in industry, the security and resiliency and those sorts of things are key needs in 5G networks.
Yeah, one example being the access authentication framework developed within 5G for both 3GPP and non-3GPP access, and that supports basically a lot of novel cryptography algorithms with the EAP authentication key agreement, which enhances the flexibility for security. So some of the things are already part of the specification, but indeed what Simon introduced is the critical points.
Okay. Well, regarding the future of IoT, which do you think will prevail? The narrowband IoT or the LTE category M1, M2? Which one wanna answer?
I don't think it's either or. I think they will all coexist. There are needs for very low power, very low bit rate devices in scale. And so NB-IoT type things and the will come, but increasingly even IoT have cameras attached to more sensors, sending more traffic and higher bit rate. So even IoT devices will many types of them will require higher and higher bandwidths. And that's exactly in release 17 of, they're looking at what they call NR Lite and things. So the evolution of NB-IoT through LTE-M, which was the sort of higher bit rates, into higher throughputs, but still IoT. So they will all coexist because they all have different needs, I think, really, and you choose the right one for the right problem you're trying to solve. But these are ongoing, and also, of course, energy usage and energy efficiency is all part of the puzzle, and this again are being looked at and improved and extended in different releases of 3GPP as well.
Okay. Now I have here one or two questions regarding the 5G as a service project. One of the questions is, how will 5G as a service project will use blockchain in the marketplace?
Okay, tough question for a very short time, but essentially, well, for those of you who are not familiar with blockchain, I will not be the best person to explain it, but think of it about as a decentralized database where everyone knows all the records because they share, and every time something is changed, everyone has to agree on it. So based on that, we can ensure that the data that we store on the blockchain is immutable and decentralized, meaning that you don't have to trust a single entity and things don't change, right? You agree on a contract condition and it's stored there and it cannot be changed because all of the things that are stored take into account what was written before. So it's basically a chain. And we use it to keep the contract information. So payment models, SLAs, penalties, without the need of a third-party entity, of how do you say it, a regulator for it. And essentially the smart contracts, which is basically piece of code of software that's being run in these decentralized computing units that feed the blockchain. They allow to deploy the logic to the contract. So they allow us that whenever a specific condition or event occurs, imagine that the small cell, not the ones from Accelera, but imagine the small cell shuts down and it's not providing connectivity and it's not meeting the SLA, so the uptime agreement. This can trigger an automatic action like a penalty payment or something similar. And essentially, this allows for the consumers and providers to negotiate and agree with these conditions prior to the contract signing in a transparent way. So they all have the trustworthiness of the agreement within this smart contract. This piece of code will be run and it cannot be tampered with by unauthorized users or malintended people. So I hope this answered. I mean, it was a very one-on-one blockchain in a very short time. So I hope this helped.
Okay, thank you. And another question regarding the project is, when can we expect to start the pilots? And so implementing in the field the pilots, and I know that it will be your best expectations and also the first results that we think that we can have.
Soon, I hope. So essentially, we are now starting the second half of the project, and we are just finalizing some of the documentation that we need to deliver to the European Commission, and exactly one of these documents is specifying the pilots and how they will be run. We are engaging actively with our network of partners to start registering the sites and start defining exactly the specification of these sites where we can run private networks, and we hope that by 2022, sorry, we'll have the pilots running, and beginning of 2022 we have the pilots running and demonstrating in the solution developed within 5G as a service. But let's see how things flow, and well, we'll see how, if now the return to the new normality will now resume operations if we don't have many delays on chipset manufacturing and other conditions that COVID has raised. But we look forward to by mid 2022 we'll have demonstratable results. Sorry.
Okay, now I have $1 million question, which is future. In your personal opinion, for all the three, but especially for Ricardo and Sergio, when can we expect to have commercial availability 5G in Portugal?
Well, it's not just
I said it was $1 million question.
Yeah, it's not just $1 million. It's also a tricky question. So I'd say we are starting to have 5G as something like just a 4G evolution. So we are going to start to see some marketing and let's say giving the market, the mass market, some 5G experience, some kind of flavor of 5G. So I think this will happen very soon. even if just in a limited geography, like stadiums, high density locations. So I think it will happen. Okay, so I think the operators will, I mean, the MNOs, the ones that are the natural operators of networks, they also need to figure out how they are going to, let's say, to price these services. So they need to do huge investments. So they also need to look for new revenues, and this is the challenge for the operators. But I think things will start by some kind of demos of improving the capability of our packages that we have as citizens, as users, as individual users. Now, as Simon showed, the real 5G transformation, we are still working on it. And so I think it will take, I mean, some more time. But when you think about verticals, it's not just about technology, as Irets normally says in this kind of conferences and talks. So you need to understand if the infrastructure is on the, let's say, the right grade of construction. So you really need to also do some risk management around these networks to be able to have business continuity plans, to know that your risk is low when putting very mission critical services on top of any network. So it's not just being a public network, but also a private network. The challenge is the same: how you build a network, how you control the network and its resources, and ultimately how you operate the network. So I think this is a new challenge. We are still learning how to interpret and use very innovative technological innovations that 5G is bringing. So I guess it will take some more time, a couple of years for this to mature, so that we can start building let's say, the right grade of networks for industries. I'm not talking about the normal user. Normally, a normal user has the best effort SLA or not even a written SLA. So when we go for industries, I think it needs the base is there. So we have the core principles and capabilities there. But I think they will mature, and then we will go really into a planning phase that will promote the required conditions so that industries can run critical services on top of these networks.
Yeah, that's a very tough question, Gonçalo. In fact, we are not at all the best example with the rollout, as you might have heard in the news, with the auction process still ongoing. So indeed, I hope that this rollout starts, as Sergio mentioned, with a few use cases where you see infrastructure as stadiums already looking forward to demonstrate 5G connectivity, industrial facilities, hospitals, and hopefully RH at scale, thanks to 5G as a service and other initiatives. But indeed, I hope that we can at least reach the commercial availability before 2030. But who knows how things will evolve. But I think it will be as a smooth rollout, as Sergio pointed out.
But just to add a thing that relates to what I said in the beginning, that we have a political ambition and goals. And so by 2025, there are already intermediate goals in this digital decade. And I think that is the pressure point. We know that in Portugal we are delayed, but I mean, the pressure is mounting because there are goals for 2025. These goals translate in coverage and performance. So, I mean, I would say that in 2025, things are already for sure happening. You will have the main, let's say, communication paths like highways, trains, will for sure be covered because they are priorities for the Commission. And you will start having the major towns with a certain degree of coverage. So I would say that one thing is, let's say, the normal way of doing the business and planning, but nowadays we have all this pressure and constant monitoring of the Commission about achieving these goals in a very specific time frame.
Okay, now I have a final question and a wrap up one, which is the subject of our session. Is 5G agreed to all services? want to start?
We hope so. Okay, so we've seen this on the fixed networks, and so 5G is like the first technology capability set that, in theory, is able to meet, let's say, to be a multi-service network, as we already find in the fixed networks. So I would say that that is the ambition, to have a converged technology that is able to go from, let's say, the simplest sensor that we can find to, let's say, the high performance, high speed use cases that we will also find in the market.
Indeed.
Go
ahead.
From my viewpoint, yeah, I think certainly 5G will be part of the solution. That's for sure. I mean, also it will be complementary to lots of other technologies, you know, fiber and other types of IoT networks and other types of technologies. But more and more, what you're seeing is that the 5G services are being deployed not only over radios, but also over fiber networks like fiber to the home, PON networks. You have a SIM card and 5G service running over top of those. So I think 5G will over the years more and more become integral to smart nets, because without connectivity, smart nets would just never happen. You need the connectivity. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. And 5G will be a fundamental element of providing connectivity for these grids in the future.
Indeed.
Yeah, and better than me, Simon and Ricardo will say that it's a journey. So you are already thinking about 6G, because you know there are still some issues that you need to improve, and you also need technology to do it. So it's a continuous journey. So 5G will drive us to 6G and so on. But what we are talking is, as Simon was saying, converged infrastructures that are able to support this connectivity.
Exactly. And to answer some other questions, that it will allow for smart grids use cases, and a lot of the most popular energy use cases are related to the smart grid. You'll be able to have self-healing and real-time information from all these sensors with automated control to detect and respond to system problems, avoiding or mitigating power outages and power quality problems and service disruptions. So this is the main use cases that we are now looking at in the energy sector, and as a roadmap, as a path, and evolving towards 6G now. All things will then scale and add more use cases as we go. But indeed, it's one of the most interesting domains to leverage on 5G, and we hope that with 5G as a service we can demonstrate it.
Well, let me thank you very much to you all for your participation. It was an honor to me to moderate this session with you. And Monica, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Gonçalo, and thank you all. We just reached to the end of this webinar, and it was a great webinar with a lot of information. I'm sure right now we are all more aware of what is 5G and what is the role that can play in the future. And this wouldn't be possible without the presence of our guests. So I would like to thank to Simon, Ricardo, and Sergio for your availability and for being able to share with us your knowledge and to provide us such a lively and fruitful discussion. And also I would like to thank to Gonçalo for organizing this session and for moderating the webinar. And of course, last but not least, I would like to thank to all of you, to all our attendees, for being here. Every webinar that we organize, you support us, and we are here. So thank you. And in the next month, in the beginning of the month, we will have another webinar with another energy topic, and that's all. Thank you, and enjoy your afternoon. Thank you.